With each iteration, tablets are getting more and more powerful. Jumps in processing and graphics power slowly close the gap between laptops and tablets. In some cases in benchmarking tests, iPads are even faster than Apple's MacBook laptops. But what does that mean in real use case scenarios? Can a graphic designer or a photographer just start using an iPad for day-to-day work? Can we replace a laptop with a much lighter and easier to carry iPad? This is what we're about to find out in this new series. Since the amount of creative use cases is quite varied, from image editing and vector graphics to video editing and music production, we can't possibly fit everything into one video. That's why I'm going to split some of these creative use cases into several videos. In the end, we will hopefully have a clearer picture of the power of the iPad and if it's able to replace a desktop or at least work as a laptop replacement when on the road. We're going to kick off this series with probably the most difficult task of them all: 3D. You'll think that a laptop compared to a tablet, no matter what the benchmarks say, cannot be beat. And of course you would be right. Not just specs-wise, but for other more basic and mundane reasons. For example, the amount of 3D software available on a regular computer cannot even be compared to 3D applications on a tablet. But it's not just the amount of choice available, but it's also the quality of the software. We cannot really compare mature 3D applications with many years of development to a new 3D application on a tablet. Apart from that, there are also even more fundamental issues, like thermals. No one can expect a super thin tablet like the iPad to be able to sustain peak performance for long periods of time. Tablets are built to deliver great performance in bursts, so having a tablet rendering for hours is just out of the question. Even if the system on a chip could render for hours without throttling to 1 MHz, we would probably have to put it in the freezer to keep it from melting. What if we take just one aspect from the vast field of 3D? For example, modeling. Could that work on a tablet? It's not as CPU taxing as rendering, and the iPad has the power to push a fair amount of polygons around. So it's not unreasonable to think that a modeling application could actually work on the iPad, and it's exactly what a lot of software companies try to do with their applications on this platform. At the moment of publishing this video, there are a lot of 3D applications for the iPad, but only a handful of them can be used for actual work. Most of the applications are just viewers of 3D models, but we want to be able to do more than just view a model. So when we take out all the viewers and the really basic modeling applications, we're left with mainly 3 choices: Onshape, Shapr3D, and Forger. Onshape and Shapr3D are subscription-based applications that you can use for free with some limitations, while Forger is just a €4 one-off purchase. Onshape and Shapr3D are CAD modeling applications, while Forger is a sculpting application. Even though Onshape is a very powerful application and users have the opportunity to build complex real-world objects, it has 2 issues that push it out of the list. The first one has to do with the interface. It's not horrendous or something like that, but it's obvious that the UI is not particularly optimized for the iPad. It's a CAD modeler that can be used also in a browser, so it's not built with the iPad in mind. It was built to work firstly on a browser and secondly on the iPad. You can definitely navigate around the UI quite fast on the iPad, it's just that it doesn't feel like the perfect fit for a tablet interface. Of course, that's only my opinion, so I would encourage you to test it out and decide for yourself. The other prohibitive factor, and probably the most important one, is the enormously high cost. The cheapest version of the application will set you back $1,500, and that is per year. So adding that kind of cost on top of your regular 3D package just to have a 3D application on the go is a tough pill to swallow. Especially when we're talking about a CAD modeler where you would have to do a lot of geometry cleanup in the end. So for a regular Cinema 4D user or any other polygonal based 3D application, this offering might not be so ideal. Now, how about the other CAD modeler, Shapr3D? Shapr3D is also a bit on the expensive side, and it also has the same CAD geometry problems as Onshape. It has though two things working for it. It's more reasonably priced than Onshape, even though not as feature complete. It costs $240 per year, so it's a little bit easier to consider as an on-the-go modeler. It also has one other very good thing, an interface designed specifically for tablet use. It's built from the ground up with the iPad in mind, and it shows. Gestures, the Apple Pencil, quick menus, and a lot more are put to use in order to bring an interface that is viable for tablet users. But again, just to repeat myself, Shapr3D is a CAD modeling based software, so that means whatever you model will need some cleanup once you move it into Cinema 4D or any other program. You can definitely render things straight out of the application, but if you're planning to send the model to another stage in the production pipeline, you need to do some touch-ups. At this point, I need to mention that the Shapr3D people were kind enough to give me a 2-month trial in order to test all the features of the application. The video is not sponsored in any way, but I approached them in order to fully examine what the application was capable of. So let's dive deeper into Shapr3D. This is how the application looks like. By default, the Discover tab is selected, which shows a combination of your documents at the top and some news about the application at the bottom. What I do like is that they've actually integrated all the information you might need inside the app. You don't need to open the browser and start looking for info. Tutorials, the manual, and the forum are all accessible from within the app. For example, if you have a question, you can go into the forum and either post your question or check to see if someone else had a similar issue. Or for example, you can easily start browsing the manual to find the information you need. It's a small thing, but a huge workflow booster. If you don't want to see any of that stuff, you can just switch to the Designs tab, where you will find all of your documents without any of the clutter. With the free version, you're limited to 3 documents and have some very limited export options. You basically cannot really have a nicely exported model without the subscription. There are some other smaller constraints like applying materials and transparency to objects, but these for me are the main setbacks when working with the free version. But let's create a new document to see how the application looks like. As you can see, it has a super clean layout with lots of space for building your object. You don't really feel constrained. All of the main tools are basically on this side, and the options at the bottom are some less frequently used options. The tools are on the right because I'm left-handed, but you can easily switch to right-handed mode by just dragging the toolbar to the right. Shapr3D requires both touch and also the Apple Pencil. Some people don't really like that, but I actually find it quite helpful. So navigation and zooming in and out is done with your fingers, and all other applications can be done with the Apple Pencil. But I'm using my right hand for more than just navigation. Basically, most of the menu-based operations I do with my right hand, and the actual building on the model I do with the Apple Pencil on my left hand. It works quite well, and I kinda wish all 3D applications felt so tactile. The modeling operations can all fit into one menu. It's basically lathing, extrusions, and Boolean operations. So if you've used any other modeling program, it'll take you a very short time to familiarize yourself with the modeling tools. As I mentioned before, the application is designed with the iPad in mind, so there are a lot of nice interface shortcuts and interaction controls. For example, the way you build objects in the application is by drawing a sketch in the top view or any other view, and then switching to perspective view to apply some operations to your sketch, like lathing or extrusions. You can access these views from the menu here, but this can be time consuming compared to nice shortcuts that are available. Let me show you what I mean by that. Let's start by creating a cube. I can create my sketch in this perspective view, but I prefer to go to the top-down view. So I'll just double tap, and now I'm in the top view. Now I can start drawing my rectangle here. And once I'm done, I want to extrude it. To go into the 3D view, I can go to the menu, but I can also do something faster. I can just swipe and I'm back into perspective view. Or if I want to reset the view and get the default perspective, I just double tap on the cube. Now to extrude, I just select my sketch and then swipe up or down. If I want to be precise, I can just tap on the number here and input the number I want. If the values are in the way, I can just move it around to somewhere that doesn't interfere with the model. Another cool thing is how to draw curves and circles. By default, we draw straight lines, but if we want to draw, let's say, a circle, we can do it in two different ways. We either do a circular movement, or we flick our pencil and our line will switch to a circular line. Now, if we want to draw curves, we can start with a line, and then by pressing down slightly, we create a curve point. We can later on adjust the curve by manipulating these curve points. I definitely am more familiar with how Bezier curves operate, but I can still get the result I want with this workflow. It just needs some getting used to. Selecting a face or an edge or a polygon is also super simple. So to select this face, we just tap on it. To select the edge, we tap on that. And finally, to select the whole object, we just double tap. Simple as that. The way the transform operations work are also quite nice. They work as you expect, so you can just move it around or rotate or scale. But what is really handy is the fact that we can move the axis point wherever we need it. So we can move it to a corner, and as you can see, it snaps to that corner. Or we can move it to the middle of the polygon, and then rotate based on that. It's super flexible. Another great thing are all the constraints we can apply to a sketch in order to have an accurate design. Let's draw two lines. I'm not being very careful here, but we can fix things with the constraints. So I want these lines to have the same length. What I need to do is select them both and choose equal in my settings here. Now both will have the same length. If I want to adjust the length, I can click on one of the lines and tap on the number here. When I press enter, you will notice that the other line will adjust in order to have the same length as the other one. Now let's say we want these lines to be parallel to each other. We select them again and hit the parallel option here. These constraints help us a lot when we're drawing our shapes, because we can be accurate without too much hassle. For example, let me close the shape here. Now, if I want to make this shape shorter, let me first unlock the length. I can just select this line here and move it up or down. Our overall shape will be maintained because of the two constraints we applied previously. It works really well and very intuitively. The application is filled with these nice little things. For example, I absolutely love how mirroring works. The way it works is by first creating the mirror axis and then mirroring your object based on that axis. It's super simple to do. So let me draw two lines, one vertical and one horizontal. Now I will select my cube, go to the mirror command here, and the system will guide me through the process. It tells me to select the object I want to mirror. I already did that, so I don't need to do anything more. Then I hit next, and then it tells me that I should choose the line I want to use for mirroring. I will choose the vertical line, and then I will choose copy, and my cube is mirrored. I can do the same with the horizontal line, and again my cube is mirrored on that axis as well. Super easy, super fast. You can use exactly the same approach with construction planes. So let's say I want a construction plane on this edge of the rectangle. I can choose the edge and then go to Add and choose Construction Plane. I will have it in 45 degrees, so now I can start drawing on that construction plane. Let's say this is the shape I want. I can extrude it and create a hole on the other cube. Now let's see how we can create a simple object. I'm going to model this screwdriver here. It's really simple, but it's enough to give you an idea of how modeling works in Shapr3D. I'm going to start by first importing an image. This feature is only available in the subscription version, so keep that in mind when playing with the application. Then I proceed by drawing the top-down view of the screwdriver. This can be done super easily with all the handy constraints and drawing tools available. Once that is done, all I need to do is extrude the sketch, which is done by just swiping up or down depending on the direction you want the extrusion to be. If you want to be accurate or need a specific value, you can later on adjust the extrusion by just typing the number you want. Now for the profile, I switch the camera to the front view and import another image of the screwdriver. Keep in mind that for all this I'm using only mobile devices. I took the images with my iPhone, which were immediately synced through iCloud, and then I could access those images on the iPad within a few seconds. So if you have to, you can work really fast and without needing a computer or any other device other than your phone and your tablet. As a matter of fact, you could use just the iPad to take the pictures. We don't even need the phone. Now to see behind the model, I'm making the model transparent, and now I can draw the shape that will cut the top of the screwdriver head. I then just lay the shape and scale it up a little bit to make it work with the main shape. Selecting individual objects is very easy. You just double click them and they are selected. Alternatively, you can assign them to a new layer and enable and disable them that way. Now to cut off the top part, I just use a simple Boolean operation and get rid of the excess at the top. Now for the curved profile, I just create a simple shape that I will then lathe and subtract from the main shape. Now to add a bit more detail, I select all edges and bevel them out. In some cases, selecting just one edge is enough to bevel everything without having to select every single edge, but in this case I had to select them one by one, which can be tedious, but it wasn't something that took that long. I hope though that some sort of automated way can be used in the future. Now for the actual screwdriver, I use again an image to trace the profile of it, and then I just lathe everything again. For the tip, again it's a simple subtraction of a shape used 4 times for each edge. Now that the model is complete, we can just go ahead and export it. The process again is super simple. We can either save it on the cloud, but because I want to open it in Cinema, I will just airdrop it to my Mac. This is where we hit a bump. The model loads fine and without any issues, it's just that the fact we used a CAD modeler is showing its disadvantages in the final object's geometry. Even though in this case we can fix the issues relatively fast, it's not going to be the same with other models. So even though the application is great to use, there will be a point in our production where we will hit this bump. For 3D users not living in the CAD world, this will be an issue. I imagine that for them it's going to be more of a rough draft tool, just for testing out ideas. And these are basically my 2 issues with the app, the final geometry and the price. Thankfully though, most of the application is available for free, so you can give it a try and see if it fits your needs. It's definitely worth a look, and I'm very excited to see how the application will progress in the future. It's very polished, and it's obvious that a lot of care and attention was put into it. Now let's move from hard surface modeling to sculpting. Forger is probably the biggest surprise for me. It costs almost nothing, no more than 4 or 5 euros with the in-app purchase, and it's basically a mini ZBrush. I came with 0 expectations when downloading the app, since I've heard nothing about it before. I was expecting a really poorly built app, but I was pleasantly surprised. Disregard the poor looks of the UI, the application is just packed with features. It has layers, a completely customizable brush system, masking, baking, resymmetry, subdivision levels, image references, everything you can imagine. It's a complete sculpting application. I was just blown away when I started to use it. It's obvious that the developer who built the application has some sculpting experience, because everything you need is available and also easily accessible. But let's go into the app and see how it works. The interface is taking as little space as possible, but if you swipe to the left, you will find all sorts of menus and options. Everything you need for sculpting is visible from the get-go. So on the right side, because I'm left-handed, you will find all the sculpting tools available. On the far right, we have the options for the brush size and the intensity, so we can change these really fast. And at the bottom, we have all the frequently used options, like smoothing and inverting the direction of the brush, so you don't have to constantly dig into menus. Very handy is the option to change the direction of the light, which is very important when evaluating the form. Of course, we can subdivide the mesh and go to a lower or a higher level, depending on which stage of the sculpting process we're at. We also have some great options for adjusting the fall off of the brushes. It's exactly how you would expect it to work. We also have options for steady strokes and for remembering the brush size. By default, the brush size is the same for all brushes, but if you want the reverse behavior, you can adjust it easily. Here you can see we can also enable layers. We can start sculpting details on a separate layer and then either tone down the details or completely turn them off. We also have the ability to adjust the color of the light and its intensity, and also to add more objects to our scene. For example, spheres for the eyes or other accessories you might need to sculpt around the character. Of course, masking is available as well, and it's also accessible through the quick menu at the bottom right. By pressing it, we create the mask, and then we can draw uninterrupted on the rest of the mesh. By clicking outside with a pen, we can easily reverse the mask, and by swiping, we can deselect the mask. It has a ton of other options which would take a lot of time to go through, but as you can see, it's a fully featured app. If you've used ZBrush or any other sculpting program, you will feel instantly right at home. For the basics, it took me maybe 5 minutes to figure things out, and to dive deeper into the app, maybe half an hour or so. Now, when your sculpt is ready, you can export it as an OBJ and either start retopologizing or continue to sculpt on the computer. I can definitely picture myself working with this app since it allows you to easily work on the go and then, once you're on your computer, finalize your idea. I'm amazed that such a complete app actually exists and that no one really knows about it. At least I didn't know about it. As far as sculpting goes, I think Forger is a no-brainer. It contains everything you need and it costs as little as a cup of coffee. In the regular modeling, I feel there's still room for improvement. The applications that are already there are perfectly capable, it's just that they might not be the ideal solution for people that don't work with CAD software day in and day out. There seems to be a polygonal modeling application in development called Polydust. At the moment, it's still in the beta phase, so I'm not sure when we're going to see the final product and what the final cost will be. From the screenshots and the videos available, it looks like the UI could lead to some repetitive actions from a user's point of view, but I haven't really used the app, so we just need to wait and see. The good news is that you can apply to get into the beta, so if you're interested, it might be worth checking out. I will leave the link in the description below. So is the iPad good for 3D work? If we look at the 3D field as a whole, meaning modeling, animation, rendering, etc., we're not there yet. On the modeling side, there are some good options, but of course there's plenty of room to grow. The tablet sector is still an untapped market for 3D, so I'm curious to see how things will evolve in the next few years. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions or if you want to see something more from these apps that I might not have mentioned. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.